Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, so in this video, I'd like to talk about the Venezuelan migrant crisis in the United States. Okay, just for everybody's information, okay, I do live in South America. Okay, and so I have been witness for the last 6 or 7 years to the realities of the Venezuelan migrant crisis, and so I do have some personal experience with this. But I'd like to focus this video on the incident in Aurora, Colorado, a few weeks ago. There's been some viral video that shows a very disturbing incident where you have a lot of very young people who apparently really are Venezuelan migrants, and they're just very carelessly and casually carrying very powerful firearms inside an apartment complex. And there has been some question as to are they a member of Tren de Aragua gang? And if they are members of the Tren de Aragua gang, does that gang actually have control over the apartment complex? Let me just tell you guys, I don't care whether they're members of the Tren de Aragua gang. Okay, I'm sure in Venezuela there's lots of gangs, and there's probably lots of young people that might want to be in gangs, but maybe they're not officially part of a gang. I work in criminal defense, and I've defended lots of young people that act like they're in gangs, but they're not officially in a gang, but they're still acting like gang members. So does it really matter whether they're part of Tren de Aragua? And secondly, does it really matter if they have full control of the apartment complex? Isn't it bad enough if they're just doing what they're doing with those guns and basically acting in a way that makes us wonder, okay, what kind of vetting is going on at the border with Venezuelan migrants? I think that's the question, okay? Whether they have full control over the apartment complex, I don't think that's the real question here, okay? But let's just see, this thing has gotten a lot of press, and let's just see, how some people in the let's say outside the mainstream media, let's see how people that supposedly cover the news and supposedly try to be very neutral, let's see how they're covering this case.
So all started with this viral video. Let's put it up there on the screen. What you see in front of you were what was alleged to be, quote, armed Venezuelan gangs taking over whole buildings and vandalizing public property in Aurora, Colorado, just outside of Denver.
And by the way, I purposely picked this clip from Sagar and Jetty to get started here because, I really do, actually, I do respect Sagar. Okay, I almost said I used to, but I really do respect Sagar. The problem I have here is that he's already loading the issue in a way that's setting it up to be a non-issue. In other words, he's loading the issue as it's proposed and it's alleged that these people are taking over whole buildings, as though that were the standard. In other words, shouldn't we be worried even if they're not taking over the building? So I'm very preoccupied because it's like they're setting it up so they can say this has been debunked or this isn't true, when what they're really saying is it's not true, they're taking the whole buildings, right? You see how they're playing with that? I really don't like that. And this can help us make sense of, let's say, what a related YouTuber has said that also made it sound as though this whole thing were debunked. But now we'll see that it really is not debunked. But let's see what Kyle Kalinske says, because he also had a kind of a similar spin on this.
And now you saw in Aurora, Colorado, a group of very tough young thugs from Venezuela taking over big areas.
You're not going to be surprised to learn this is total fake news. This was some boomer Facebook bullshit that took off and went viral. Then meanwhile, the cops in Colorado came out and said, this is actually not true at all.
Okay, so I'm not afraid to say that I think Kyle Kalinske is kind of full of shit here. I mean, really just kind of full of shit. Okay, I'm sorry to say that. All right. Now, granted, Kyle Kalinske is very partisan. He obviously hates Trump. He's going to take the opposite position in any argument that could hurt Kamala Harris. Okay, I understand that, but he could at least be honest. Okay, now granted, he's technically telling the truth. Okay, because we'll hear from one of these interim police chiefs in Aurora. We'll hear that technically they did not have control over the whole building.
These were allegedly members of a Venezuelan gang who were migrants, illegal migrants to the United States, and that this complex was allegedly fully taken over by these people.
Got quite a few of our officers out here that are out here tonight again. I've been out here for several weeks, making contacts with our residents, reassuring them about the criminal activity that's happening here and how we're going to address it. We've been talking to the residents here and learning from them to find out what exactly is going on. And there's definitely a different picture. I'm not saying that there's not gang members that don't live in this community, but What we're learning out here is that gang members have not taken over this complex.
Or whatever that means. How do you measure how much control someone has over the whole building? What if they only have 30% control over a building? Is that zero? You know what I mean? Is that not having control of the whole building? So you see how it's possible to say this is false because they're framing the issue in terms of how much control they have over the building, as opposed to, is there a problem with Venezuelan migrants? Okay. And then the other issue is people try to make this thing of, oh, are they Tren de Aragua or are they not Tren de Aragua? The real issue is you have Venezuelan migrants who are carrying weapons, very freely, very casually, and it's scaring people and it's very alarming.
In the Facebook post, you said those complexes were not under the control of the owners. What do you mean by that, and what does a path forward look like?
Well, that they had chased the property managers off the property. That there was a criminal element that intimidated the property manager who left the property, and it was that property manager that was responsible for collecting rent from the tenants. He left the property.
Okay, this is Mayor Kaufman, okay, who's a little bit higher than any police chief. So this is the real mayor of Aurora, and he's going to know as much as any politician in this area, okay? And he's admitting, he's not saying they had 100% control. Who cares how much the percent control? But he's saying that the criminal element had run off the manager of that apartment, okay? So this is where we get to a point where we really cannot trust what we're being told in the media, not even in the alternative media on YouTube. Okay. And I'm really surprised by this. Okay. Now, granted, we can all ask the philosophical question, well, how much control did they have? Did they have 100% control? Well, they had enough control. They had enough control to run off whoever the manager was that was collecting rent. Okay. I mean, that's not nothing. And even if you can argue, well, let's say the manager was a coward and he didn't have the guts to stay. Who cares? I mean, if you have kids running around with those kind of weapons and they're pretending to be gang members, those same kids can commit robberies all night long, all day long, all week long, And so to say that there's not a problem with these Venezuelan migrants, I think that's very naive. Okay. Now this mayor is going to explain even more, and we're going to see this as a real problem. Okay. It's not debunked and it's not fake news.
You say they chased off the property owners. Who are they?
Oh, I think it was gang members at some level.
Okay, so it's kind of what I thought. Even from my experience working in criminal defense, a lot of times, people who act like gang members, they're not necessarily affiliated with like a major gang. They may just be acting like gang members, or they may be very low-level gang members, but who cares? Okay, and what if we could find out that they're not really from Tren de Aragua? Okay, does that still mean it's not a problem? You see what I'm saying?
The criminal elements who had banded together. I think that in terms of my briefing for law enforcement, what they've told me is that, sadly, there's so much criminality in Venezuela, and that it seems that in some of those criminal elements have come up here, and that, for instance, Venezuela does not cooperate with the United States with our immigration services when it comes to sharing criminal histories. So it's difficult to vet people at the border.
Okay, so it turns out we have a very, very serious problem, okay? Leaving aside anything that happened in Aurora, Colorado, this is just illustrative, okay? This is revealing something that is big news, okay? Venezuela, there's tons of people coming from Venezuela into the United States, tons of Venezuelans, okay? And it turns out that Venezuela has no way, I mean, they say that Venezuela refuses to, but I have experience with this. Venezuela has probably no way to really send meaningful criminal history, okay, about people coming into the United States. So it means we cannot vet Venezuelans coming into the United States. That's huge news, okay? So people saying this is fake news, what they're really saying is you can't prove they had 100% control of the apartment complex, or people are bickering over whether these are real Tren de Aragua gang members, okay? The real question, the real issue is we cannot vet Venezuelans coming across the border. That's the serious issue. And I'm here to tell you, because I live in South America, wherever you see a lot of Venezuelans, and I'm sorry to say this, okay, but you see a lot of crime. I don't know what it is. Like, I'm not a sociologist. I'm not here to tell you why, but I'm telling you, where there's a lot of Venezuelan migrants, there's a lot of crime. Okay, that's just the way it is.
The pattern here in these properties is that when you have a concentration of Venezuelan migrants, it seems to be a target-rich environment for a criminal element to come in and to exploit them. What I believe happened, but we haven't confirmed this yet, is that the owner, potentially working with some nonprofits who were receiving state and federal dollars to help migrants, placed them there in a concentrated way that created a problem.
But that is unconfirmed.
That is not confirmed yet.
Okay, you'd have to know something about deep current politics to understand what he's really saying, okay? Because what he's really referring to when he says nonprofits, okay, he's referring to the fact that there is a major political program, okay, initiated by Joe Biden. Okay, this is a Biden program, okay? This program is a humanitarian parole program, okay, for migrants that come from Nicaragua, I think Cuba, Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela, primarily Venezuela. Okay. So they've set up a program, okay, where anybody coming in and just claiming parole, anybody who comes to the border and claims asylum, political asylum, and believe me, anybody can put just a boilerplate package for political asylum. It means almost nothing. A lot of people who submit asylum packages submit completely false applications, or they submit applications that are basically based on economic conditions, not so much on actual political danger. You know what I mean? Okay, but be that as it may, okay, the Biden administration has chosen to allow this humanitarian parole program. Well, they say they'll let in 30,000 per month, okay, but I think the actual numbers coming in are much, much higher than that. Okay, so there's a huge number of people, mostly from Venezuela right now, okay, that are coming in under this humanitarian parole program, okay, and federal and state dollars are allocated, okay, and they get funneled into nonprofit organizations that will bus these people and will distribute them into housing, okay. And a lot of people don't know that these Venezuelan people who come in here, they get all their housing paid for free. Okay, they get all their housing paid for, and they get all their food paid for, and they even get a stipend, like actual money, cash money to spend. Okay, so I'm not sure what the whole totals are, but I understand that for each individual, I think the amount of cash that they get is like over $1,000, more or less. Okay, they'll pay for your rent, they'll pay for your food, and I think they get a little bit of spending money. Anybody who knows the details, please make a comment here. But a lot of people don't know about this program. It's called humanitarian parole. Okay. And this is where we're getting all these Venezuelans, and they're going all over the United States, wherever there are sanctuary cities. Okay. And it turns out that Colorado is a sanctuary state. Okay. So what he just said by talking about, the nonprofits and then the owner working with the nonprofits, that's how they do it. Okay. These nonprofits will basically shepherd these people from the border and distribute them to basically sanctuary cities. And they'll find owners or people who own hotels or apartment complexes, and they'll set up a situation where these migrants can stay and basically get everything paid for. I think a lot of people don't know about this.
Have you been able to confirm any Tren de Aragua activity within those complexes?
I think the view is kind of mixed on that. Quite frankly, that part is not relevant to me. Now, the DEA has confirmed to me that there are Tren de Aragua elements that are involved in fentanyl distribution in and around this area. That is of deep concern to me.
Okay, so those kids that we saw in the video carrying the weapons in the viral video, okay, well, who knows if they are members of Tren de Aragua, and who knows, maybe they're Tren de Aragua wannabes, or maybe they're part of another gang. But Mayor Kaufman is confirming that there are Tren de Aragua people in Aurora, okay, and probably all over the United States. So now we get it, okay. Who cares about this particular apartment complex? All this apartment complex did was call attention to something, a bigger problem, that we have problems vetting at the border, that Venezuela does not allow us to really vet people coming in, and that at the same time, Biden has this program to allow floods of Venezuelan migrants into the United States, despite the fact that we cannot vet them, okay? And then voila, we've got Tren de Aragua all over the United States, not just in Aurora, by the way, okay? And they're trafficking in fentanyl. Okay, and people in New York know that they also commit really bad crimes. Okay, these people have no trouble killing, and they're very violent, and they routinely rob and kidnap people. Okay, so and by the way, I live in South America. I don't know how much is Tren de Aragua here where I live, but I can tell you that Venezuelans, well, you have to be kind of careful. They will kidnap, and they'll do horrible things. I mean, they say vacunas here, vaccine. What a vaccine is if you own a business here, you have to pay these gangs to sort of vaccinate yourself from getting, getting bad things happen to you. It's kind of like a mafia trick where you have to basically pay rent to the mafia people just to have the privilege of owning a business without having the risk of something bad happening. Okay, so this is a terrible combination where Biden has this program to, instead of letting them stay in Mexico while their asylum claims are pending, the idea is to let them all come into the United States and to pay for their housing, okay, to pay for their food, to give them money, and basically just have them, just sitting just on taxpayer dollars, right? All these Venezuelan migrants, and there's no way to vet these people, and they have high rates of criminality, really.
Is it true that Tren de Aragua has came here to this area of Aurora?
Sí, por todo esto. Incluso allá arriba cerraron un apartamento.
Entonces no es una mentira que los bandilleros han venido.
No, no.
¿Y qué está haciendo los bandilleros?
Pues lo que siempre, robar, meterse a todos los conjuntos, sacar cosas de los mercados, todo eso.
Thank God for people like Nick Shirley. This is a young kid who goes around and does like really awesome interview documentaries, okay? And believe me, he did such a good job of getting early interviews of these people, because later on, other YouTubers who were trying to get interviews with these people, these Venezuelans started realizing if they started calling bad attention to the apartment complex, it might actually jeopardize their situation in the country. And I think they've been counseled to kind of like deny some of these things. But he got an early interview, and so thank God for him. We could see that some of this is really true. Okay, now whether these actual kids carrying the guns in the viral video, whether they were actually Tren de Aragua, I don't think it really matters. But it's being revealed that there really is a problem with very serious criminality among Venezuelans.
So do you believe that gang activity is actually happening here? Like bullets, we've seen videos of migrants that do have guns.
Can I say this? This neighborhood technically always has shootings. Like, this is my thing is, there was a shooting 2 nights ago. They blamed it straight on the Venezuelans. This neighborhood has always had shootings. Now, the Venezuelans, they came here and they found free rent, free housing. Why didn't the gangs, when they had the footage of the dudes with the guns, right? If it was gangbangers, they would have came in here and raided the whole situation, and this place would have been flipped, because Colorado, Denver, they put gangbangers on the terrorist list. But they seen this on the footage and they didn't even come in here. So it's kind of like...
There hasn't been one single arrest since that video took place.
No. And these fools had their faces was uncovered. But if it was some gangbangers, they definitely going to come in here. They going to indict the whole neighborhoods around here,
Okay, so you have to work in the law to understand what he was saying, okay? From a legal point of view, the way he was using that lingo about indicting the whole neighborhood, that sounds a lot like federal charges, right? Okay, so what he's saying is that normally in Colorado, when you have normal non-immigrant gangs, okay, normally the feds have no problem indicting everybody and cleaning everything up. That's actually my experience too, working in criminal defense. I've defended a lot of gang members who were indicted on RICO charges, okay, and that's very typical, especially when gangs take over an apartment complex. I've been involved in those cases, okay, but here's the thing: he's suggesting. You have to kind of read between the lines, but he's suggesting that doesn't apply to Venezuelans and to migrants. And why would that be? Okay, in my opinion, it has to do with the whole system of sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. Okay, a lot of people don't even know what a sanctuary city is. Okay, they use the term, but ask a Democrat to define it for you, and they never will. They never will. They can't do it, because if they were really going to define what a sanctuary city is or a sanctuary state, okay, it's actually a kind of a civil war. It's actually a war between the states and the federal government, okay? So what sanctuary cities really are, it's a civil disobedience, okay, where cities and states refuse to collaborate with federal authorities. That is what sanctuary city and sanctuary state really is. So Colorado has a policy of not cooperating with federal law enforcement on some level. Okay, now anybody who's part of a sanctuary city will say, but we make an exception for very serious crime. Okay, but who gets to decide how serious the crime is and where they draw the line? You see what I mean? So basically, they'll always have that get out of jail free card where a Democrat will say, oh, but come on. If it's a serious crime, of course, we'll cooperate with federal authorities, but they're the ones who decide how serious it is. You see what I mean? Okay, so basically we have a situation where you have all these Venezuelan migrants just carrying guns around and just acting, completely inappropriate. And by the way, it's a federal offense for a non-immigrant, a person with a non-immigrant visa in the U.S. to actually carry a weapon. okay, except with some exceptions, right? But what's very important here, okay, and we're getting this from somebody who's actually a witness, who's actually seen other gang members indicted, okay? What's happening here, I think, because of the sanctuary state that Colorado is, they're acting as a sanctuary state, right? That basically, whereas normally the local police would get the FBI and the ATF involved to come and indict gang activity, right? Especially when they take over apartment complexes, right? In this case, because of the sanctuary status, the local police are not going to the federal authorities because that would violate the sanctuary policy of Colorado. Okay. So whereas normally I think feds would come in and just totally take control of this sort of situation, it's not happening because of the special issue of the Venezuelan migrants, and probably because it would probably bring bad attention to people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, right? So this, I think, is very serious news. Okay, and we don't need it to be true or false whether these young kids in the viral video actually had full control over the apartment complex. Okay, I think it's only sufficient to know that there's a lot of organized kind of gang-like activity going on that normally would be under control according to this witness, right? But that the same controls are not applied to the migrants because I believe because of the sanctuary state policies. Okay, that's kind of what it looks like. Okay, now finally, all right. I do talk about politics sometimes on this channel. Okay, and so the question to, I'll ask the question to myself. Okay, is it okay to have? Is it a good idea to have, like 30,000 or more, or let's just say hundreds of thousands, of people coming from Haiti, from Cuba, from Nicaragua, from Venezuela, just to come flooding into the U.S. and under a humanitarian parole policy? Is it a good thing just to give them free food, free housing, and just basically just to spend a ton of taxpayer monies just to house these people? Okay, I don't know. I'm sure there are arguments pro and arguments con. There's arguments for this, arguments against this. Okay, but what really bugs me, okay, is that the Democrats do this without openly explaining what they're doing. Okay, if you're going to do something that's so aggressive, where you're injecting all these foreigners into the United States and paying for them to live and to eat in the United States, completely paid for, right? Then why aren't you then proud enough to just openly explain to the American people exactly what you're doing? Why does this have to be kind of a subterranean, shadowy, kind of a secret thing that nobody knows about? All right. If you're going to do something that aggressive to the country, where you're basically shoving this down our throats in the United States, then why not be open and completely transparent about it? That's what bugs me. Okay. And you guys won't be surprised to know that even people that are typically Democrats, okay, here I'm going to show you guys a video from a meeting of in a black neighborhood in Chicago of people that I think would probably generally vote Democrat, and look at the outrage these people have when they're getting flooded with Venezuelan immigrants in their neighborhood.
My name is Beatriz Ponce de Leon. I'm the deputy mayor for Immigrant, Migrant, and Refugee Rights. I'm glad you're here. I want to share. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming here.
No,
and every
don't
time,
thank us. We could have been doing something else.
I don't know if I want to make sure I understood your question. You're asking where will people go when they're here?
Right.
So I'm gonna answer that. Okay.
Guys, can we give her an opportunity to answer Ms. Matthews' question, please?
So people, the people that we're talking about are human beings just like you.
We know that. We know that. It is not us against them. We don't need you to tell us that. No, we don't need you. We don't need you to tell us that. It's not us against them, and that's the problem we don't care for. We don't care for that. We are not insensitive, but we got a problem with you thinking you can jam something down our throat.
So that's how I feel about this. This is why I am irritated at Biden's administration and what I think may be Kamala's administration, okay, is that they do things, these brazen, really activist things. They do very active, very damaging things that could really affect the economy in the United States and really affect the livelihood of people in the United States. And they just jam it down people's throats without explaining what they're doing. A lot of time, and whenever you talk to a Democrat, like I've listened to Alejandro Mayorkas, okay, being grilled in the Senate, right? And he always makes it sound like things just happen to the Democrats. Like, oh, these floods of people, they come from Venezuela, they come from Haiti, these floods of people. Well, before they had a stay in Mexico policy. Okay. So it was Biden that opened the doors and allowed them the humanitarian parole on the United States side. Okay. And then all this money and all this activism gets funneled to place these people in all these hotels and all these apartment complexes and pay them all this money, and where they get to live for free. So you can't just say, oh, they're just coming to the border. It's like they just come in. It's not our fault. No, you could let them stay in Mexico while their asylum packages are pending. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, or the second thing, if you have to let some in, you have to go through some screening. You might have to do a personality screening. People that look like they might be criminal, you might have to find a way of assessing, who looks like they're actually safe to come in. But as it stands, due to, I think, the incompetence of the Biden administration, okay, we're just saying, well, Venezuela doesn't share information. Well, hey, we could do our own we could do our own screening. You could put these people, like, let's say in 30 days of detention, and sort of examine them and see what their personalities are like. So basically, this to me just has all the signatures of a typical Biden Democrat big move. Okay. Democrats make these huge moves where they shove stuff down our throats, and they have huge consequences, right? And with just a little bit of management and a little bit of competence, you could probably screen a lot of the people who end up coming in and committing crimes. But as it stands, with Venezuelans, there's a lot of criminality. So if you don't have some screening at the border, you're going to have these problems, and they're very serious problems. Okay. Now, finally, if you do believe in sanctuary cities, that's fine, but say it out in the open and explain it. All right. But now we can see from that video I just showed you in Chicago, no Democrat in the right mind will ever openly explain what a sanctuary city is, because people hate it. Even Democrats hate it when they really hear what it sounds like, what it really is. You know what I mean? So this is what I don't like about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, is that they do these very brazen activist moves that really kind of shove things down the American's throat, but they don't explain it, and they're not transparent about what they're really doing. That's what actually bugs me. And to me, this has the same signature of our withdrawal from Afghanistan, where Biden just makes a sloppy big move, and because I guess he's just not careful, and he just doesn't know how to do things with any finesse or any nuance, you end up doing it in this really crude way, and it just looks horrible, and it makes us look terrible as Americans and as a country. So before the Afghanistan thing, and before the Ukraine war, okay, you have to be such a passive, such a guy who's behind the ball to mismanage the brinksmanship of the Ukraine war, right? To prevent that thing from happening, right? You have to be more active. But Biden, he's just the kind of guy who just sort of lets things happen, just kind of like they just let people come in over the border, and it just happens. And what are we going to do? We just have to find them a place to stay. Everything is done so sloppy and so unprofessionally, and that's kind of what made me feel like, and believe me, I don't like Donald Trump. Okay. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't like him. So I feel like I'm in a crisis myself, because we're in a situation where there's no good menu options. Our menu is terrible. Okay. But I'm here to tell you, because I do live in South America, the Venezuelan crisis is unbelievable. Some sociologist needs to study Venezuela. Why is it there's so much criminality in Venezuela? I think something happened with the Chavista revolution in Venezuela, where there's some bad mojo with maybe the culture in Venezuela, and maybe the way that Chavismo was, took over, and maybe with Maduro. But there's something cultural in Venezuela, something environmental about the Chavista regime, where people just don't have anything to keep them busy, and they just become, I don't know, when people become kind of idle and they don't have anything to do to keep themselves responsible, it almost brings out the worst in people. And this has been going on for so long in Venezuela, that Venezuela has become kind of almost like a vagrant country almost. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but, people need to look into this more deeply. And if you are going to let a lot of Venezuelans come into the country, okay, I think some sociological research should be done. Okay, I think there should be more professional research into exactly what are the conditions, the moral and psychological conditions, I think, of Venezuela, and how that has affected people culturally, okay, and how that has created, maybe given rise to more criminality, and sort of almost like like I wouldn't describe all Venezuelans as being criminal. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I see Venezuelans every day in the country that I live in. Okay, but I would say there is a lot of criminality, and there's a lot of kind of almost like a mentality of people who don't have to work. I don't know what it is. It's just something about that government in Venezuela has created this very idle, kind of vagrant sort of atmosphere where people just there's something bad that happens to human beings when they're too idle, when they don't have things to do, enough to do. It's something. It's like it just brings out the worst. And so I think more sociology needs to be applied to, what is the effect of the Chavez and Maduro regimes on people's psychology and how that's creating some cultural issues, with the new generation of young people. Okay, because people from Venezuela, they are different. You really do notice it's not just their accent. You really do notice a whole different mindset coming out of that country. So I think people should investigate that, and I think that should be part of the that should be part of the calculus in figuring out who gets to come in or under what conditions. Under what conditions. So I'm not saying there isn't a way to allow Venezuelans to come in, but I think it should be done more professionally and with less of the handwriting, the same handwriting of the way we got out of Afghanistan, because it looks so similar, just the level of sloppiness and the level of, I would say, unprofessionalism. So that's really my problem right now. And I'm here to say, I'm disappointed with both choices. Well, I don't care whether it's Trump or Kamala. I think we have a terrible menu option right now. But I'm here to tell you, this is one of the reasons why I'm uncomfortable with Kamala. And I think instead of dismissing this story, I think people should really, see that there is something really revealed in this story from Aurora, Colorado. There is a real problem. And I think Kamala should be held to talk about it, and to openly say what the hell they're doing and what does humanitarian parole mean and who are all these nonprofits that are organizing and where does all the money come from? I think Democrats should answer for that. Anyway, I'll try to do some more videos on this. This is just kind of an intro video, but I really appreciate your patience and thanks for watching.